Welcome to the Sip and Say It podcast with your host, Carlos, a.k.a. Los, a podcast that promises to deliver a raw and unfiltered experience as we dive into the one-on-one conversations about a wide array of topics. We're inviting listeners to engage in candid discussions, personal stories, and diverse perspectives. Say what's on your minds. Let's create an open space for honest dialogue. As a village, let's immerse ourselves on trending issues, personal anecdotes, thought-provoking themes. Nothing is off limits. Tune in and become part of the conversations. Let's sip and say it together.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to a Sip and Say It podcast. I'm your host, Lost of the Mostest, and I'm here with my boy,
Kevin of the Hostess.
Hey, man. So, Kev, this is the week where everybody travels and goes on out to fill their bellies up with some turkey gravy, potatoes, pumpkin pie. What'd you think?
Well, this year I purchased a Popeyes fried turkey.
Oh, interesting. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about it, but I did go on YouTube to look it up. Everyone is saying good things about it. It's I paid $60 for a frozen turkey that I need to defrost for 3 days. It's already defrosting.
Now, is that already seasoned up?
It's pre-cooked and seasoned and flash fried or flash frozen after it's fried.
Okay.
So apparently you cook it for an hour and a half covered at 375. All the juices pop out. Then the last half hour uncovered. Only complaints I've read are that it's too juicy.
I like juicy.
Yeah. So a lot of people end up making gravy from all the juice that turkey has. So.
Okay, well, that's being creative. I like that. Definitely like that. Well, listen, man, I hope during this time that, obviously either family or friends or associates, whatever, that they all go with a great meal. You know what I mean? They're not missing out on anything. And those that are unfortunate have a nice warm meal and warm place to be during this time period, right?
Amen. Yes.
So, I guess we couldn't go by it not saying, let's go into a Am I the Asshole episode.
Thanksgiving special.
That's right.
Doo-doo-doo, doo-doo-doo, doo-doo-doo.
Facts. So, am I the asshole for not attending my family's Thanksgiving lunch due to company visiting? So, let me give you a little bit of that background. So, to start, my boyfriend's parents have been divorced for over 20 years. His cousin, let's just call her Jane, from his mom's side of the family is driving 7 hours with her 2 dogs to spend Thanksgiving with us.
Okay.
My boyfriend and I are very close with Jane and play games online several times a week. Knowing this might become an issue as Thanksgiving approaches, I text my boyfriend's dad back in July to ask if it would be okay for Jane to join his family's Thanksgiving lunch. And his response was, "Why isn't," meaning her boyfriend, "asking this?" And that was the end of the conversation. So I guess dad didn't really take to that, huh?
He wanted his son to ask.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So let's fast forward to October. My boyfriend mentioned to his dad multiple times that Jane would be staying with us over Thanksgiving, but no specific discussion about the family lunch took place since it was still early. Last week, my boyfriend's dad texted us the lunch plans and asked if we were bringing our usual gourmet mac and cheese. My boyfriend replied that we were still figuring out our plans. So it looks like later that night, her boyfriend called his dad and asked if Jane could come along to the family lunch. His dad implied that it would be inappropriate for someone from his ex-in-law's family to attend. And just for context, he's only met Jane once at at a wedding 10 years ago, and the divorce happened before Jane was even born.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So his dad suggested that we come to lunch for just an hour. However, this didn't make sense for us because they live 40 minutes away. So it's an over an hour trip. Lunch never starts on time, meaning we'd be stuck there longer. And then we'd likely face guilt tripping for leaving early.
Right.
And then we still needed to cook for our own Thanksgiving dinner, which would be nearly impossible if we attended that lunch.
Right.
So we kindly explained that if Jane couldn't join, we wouldn't be able to make it to the lunch. This sparked a huge argument. So, are we the assholes for deciding not to go to my boyfriend's family lunch? What do you think, man?
I think that if they went, they'd be the assholes for going. They started this conversation back in June, July. So it's not like it's the first time father heard about it. And if he already had hesitation, trepidation, or he just was being that petty about it, he should have mentioned it then. Right. Um,
So, even with the facts, I think that they just laid out, I don't think he's really met this person because this was from a previous
right.
marriage.
This is being petty. It's
Yeah.
all being petty, really, because it's a family of the ex.
I would have taken more as their friends. So, okay, yeah,
Right.
come on over. Let's partake. What is Thanksgiving, right?
You're giving thanks for, yeah, exactly. I mean, this cousin drove 7 hours to be with them, right? One, already, she's not welcome. So even if all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, sure, you can bring her, she's already not welcome. She's going to be probably not going to feel good there, not going to be welcomed. It's not going to be a warm environment for her. She's going to be ignored.
Yeah, she's gonna feel like the oddball.
Right. And she drove 7 hours to be with you guys, another 7 hours to get back home. It's 14 hours of her life that she committed just to hang with you guys and to be with you, to celebrate Thanksgiving with you. If if the father just couldn't see that and for months ahead of time just wanted to be petty about something, then he should have just said that from the beginning and said, look, I understand she's, your cousin, you guys get along, but I had my heart broken by your mother or whatever it was that happened. I just can't have any of her family here. It's a triggering thing, triggering issue for me.
Yeah, I mean, communication would have been the key, right? And clearly, this conversation was being had already in July.
Yeah.
When we're talking about Thanksgiving, which is also even unfair that the dad, or there's an argument that kicks off of this because they're trying to explain to them, like, we'll come to your lunch, but then look at all these other variables down the line. You guys are never on time. Will it be longer?
Right.
Added to the drive already, the hour drive, and they still have to do their own cooking.
Their own cooking. I mean, and they're going to leave their guests alone for at least 4 to 5 hours.
Easily.
Right? Easily. They're going to leave her alone when she came to spend time with them, and they're just going to leave her behind. That's not fair either.
Right. So, I mean, that's, 7 hours, 1 hour. Yeah, I guess I would probably be then the asshole because I would pick my friend that dedicated their 7 hours of a drive to come over.
Yeah.
When I know I could probably catch up with my immediate,
Right.
Later on. Like I think that was a little inconsiderate.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think they're the assholes.
No, absolutely.
I think the dad is.
The dad is being, being something.
Yeah, definitely. So what you got for us, man?
All right. Well, I have one which I classify under barato or us.
Us.
So,
I mean, you got to translate that for our people.
So basically, it's a wordplay like cheap or us, right? So someone who's being really cheap.
Okay.
Am I the ass for refusing to refund a bride for her wedding photos 5 years after the wedding because she got divorced?
Oh, say that part again. I'm just trying to compute that.
Right. So you have a customer who wants a refund 5 years later because they're no longer married.
Oh, no. No.
I mean, who even asked for that?
You got to be nuts. It's 5 years later. You got to read that out to
I
us.
have to read this. I, 34-year-old female, am a wedding photographer for over a decade with over a decade of experience. 5 years ago, I was hired by Emily, now 32 years old, to photograph her wedding. At the time, she was very happy with my work. I provided a package that included a full day shoot, an engagement session, a wedding album, and digital copies of all the edited photos. She and her husband left a glowing review and recommended me to several friends. Everything was great. Fast forward to 2 weeks ago, and I get an email from Emily, which is, the bride. She says she and Jake, who she married, divorced last year, and she wants a refund for the wedding because they no longer hold any value to her. She said it's unfair that she paid so much for photos that now only serve as a painful reminder of a relationship that didn't last. At first, I thought it was a joke, but she was dead serious. She's asking for a full refund, which would be about $3,000. I politely declined and explained that the service was rendered in full, the photos were delivered, and she had no complaints at the time. Plus, it was 5 years ago. She insists that I am profiting off her misery and that a refund is the least I can do given her circumstances. I've never encountered anything like this before, and while I do feel bad that their marriage ended, I don't think it's fair for her to demand her money back now. Since I declined, she has been picketing my house and my studio. She has been sending me increasingly aggressive messages and has even left me a new and very negative review on my business page. So, mutual acquaintances who were also my clients have reached out saying that I should consider giving her at least a partial refund to avoid bad publicity, since she is also now bad mouthing the DJ for her wedding. I'm standing my ground because I believe this is absurd. But now I'm starting to wonder, am I an asshole for refusing to give her any money back?
Hell no. That's like me going, I just bought my car. It's 5 years later. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles within the latest version. I'm going to go back to the dealership and say, I want my money back. The deal's done.
Deal's done.
It's over. Just like her. Services are rendered.
Yeah.
Everything was delivered. That chick is the absolute asshole. Court. Let's go to court.
But at least in your case, the car has some value, right? Worst case, the dealer takes it back, they can resell it or whatever. But I say this is more like I went to was it Ruth's Chris Steakhouse?
Okay.
Right? And I had the biggest steak on the menu. And I go back a month later saying, you know what, I took a dump. That steak is no longer in my body. I want a refund. Didn't do me any good.
That is hilarious.
I mean, what is going on?
Like, and here's even the crazy part. How do we even know that she's the one that paid for the photos? Right.
You're right. You don't know. It could have been.
It could have been a joint thing.
Could have been joint thing. Could have been the groom. Could have been one of the parents. Could have been, any of that stuff.
I think someone's hurting for money. I think someone didn't make out too right on that divorce, and now scratching and kicking to get everything and anything they can from anywhere. Yeah, no. Services were rendered. It's a wrap.
And she's bad mouthing the DJ.
Yeah.
So she's probably trying to get money from the caterers. She's probably trying to get money from everybody.
Oh, yeah. Poor flower people.
Yeah.
Those flowers didn't survive, right? Yeah, I don't know, man. People come up with some weird stuff, man. But yeah, man, nah. She's not the photographer. The lady asking for that money.
Yeah, the ex-bride is a
yeah. She's absolutely the a-hole. Do you know what? So I love those things, man. Those are, I think, a good breaker for starting this off. But you know what? I just kind of figured that this episode we could kind of wing, certain conversations. And one of the things I really wanted to talk about was anticipation for the new year for 2025. And part of the plans for Sip and Say It, um, you know, revamp a little bit of the graphic, our advertising graphic of when you guys see Sip and Say It, at least for season two. Um, Intros and outros, kind of cleaning it up and make it in a little more short and right to the point. And yeah, I mean this entire podcasting venture was out of an idea and it's grown. And I want to fine tune it for season two. But season two, I've made mention of it. I love to try to get, or at least dedicate as much as I can of season two to creating an entire episode or series. That's the right word to say, series of all Camden related experiences. And when I say about that is the entire creation of the underworld, um, of Camden City's, I guess, uprising of narcotics, the involvement of the government, all the funding that came in, all the corruption that took place, following with, let's just say, the dismantling of a police force, and even backtracking a little bit more. But you're talking about trying to create a series to talk about a city that had over 200 open air drug markets, and the bringing together of a task force again by um, federal funds that were coming in, the homicide rate, um, that was unreal. 2012, 2013. I think it would go back to 2011, but 2011, 2012, 2013, you're having over 60 homicides.
I had lost a cousin that year that we hit 60. Yeah.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. So what I like to try to put together is the entire series to have those discussions, to bring some experienced people that were in the trenches during that time to talk about the that entire underworld. And we may not hit every little subject and every let's just call it individual that was involved in that underworld. But the reality is, we'll touch on some of the ones based on our own experiences. Um, we may talk about some homicides that were drug related or ordered based on the movement of the drug game. Um, and it's unbelievable because some of the people that I intend to try to bring inside of here, we're going to talk about little old Camden and the tentacles that it had, from New York down south, down to Mexico, and how narcotics went rampant, right through the city, to the moment crack cocaine was introduced into the city. Heroin was eventually introduced, right? So, and there was different fashions of people and organizations that ran through the city. And believe it or not, just like a movie, at one point they all sit down at the table and they divvied up. And I have a personal friend of mine, former coworker, that we'll talk about that because before he made it into law enforcement, he did security for a specific location where that event clearly occurred.
Mm.
And all of us that have grown in the city and know people that were connected or dabbled in that world, you knew who was who. Like even through, family and friends, high school events, parties, house parties that we would go to, people would know who was the guy.
Mhm.
And he got the opportunity that day to see certain players, big players, that eventually sat at the table, had their meeting, and divvied up the city, which is amazing. That this is almost like a Netflix kind of series,
Right.
movie that they could make out of this. But a lot of great jobs came out of that. A lot of successes. Um, Unfortunately, throughout, let's just call it drug war. A lot of people's lives were lost. Some for really dumb, random things, or it was a power struggle.
Hmm.
But we got to learn a lot, and you know, a person like me, and I'm going to say that I had the ability to grow up in the city, go to school in the city, have family and friends in the city, and again, just like anybody else, you knew who was who. But I never ventured out to the other side of the city, really, to until I got onto the PD, and that's going to be a good conversation because that was like a whole different world to me. And you know, once I got onto the PD and I got immersed into that world, man, I always say it's like just getting bit by a bug, man. You're there's this hound dog, you're looking for it, right? You're putting a puzzle together. It's amazing to hear conversations, people, information coming through flights, coming into the Philadelphia airport, going into Newark Airport. People driving it up, people sending it through the
Turnpike.
mail.
Yeah.
Right. It is an absolute, in my mind. Every time I think of it, is like a straight out movie. Straight out movie.
As an outsider, I have an opinion on this, but I want to ask you a question. Do you think that when you have crime bosses sit down to have a meeting to divvy up a location or an entire city, that eventually is actually a good thing because it helps to calm the violence and the murders because now there is a line drawn where this is your piece of the pie. We're no longer going to be fighting over anything. We're going to act like businessmen or businesswomen, and this is how we're going to move forward.
I think really the answer to that is the expectation.
Hmm.
What you cannot control is the unmature, unknowledgeable young stallion
Hmm.
that is hungry and is looking to rise within the ranks and or just make his own name. That's what you can't control. Because you got to remember, man, once you dabble in that world, you're not only paying attention to what law enforcement is doing, but you're also paying attention not only to the people that you got to deal with and make sure you don't cross those boundaries, right?
Mhm.
But then you're also watching your own people because your own people are going to steal from you.
That's a paranoid life to live.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you got to think of the repercussions. Whether they're out in an open drug market, people getting taken off, who's cooperating, who's giving up the tapes,
Hmm.
right? So there's a lot of, yes. To answer your question, if the hope is that all the bosses sat at a table and divvied up the city, yeah, it is to minimize war. It's to minimize the loss of life. Um, there's also the thought process that everybody's going to eat
Right.
and everybody's going to get a decent price out of all that, right?
Right.
But then again, when you talk about different factions that you got to sit there and think of, is who's the main supplier? Are they negotiating with at least during that back in that period was Colombians coming from New York
Hmm.
and or Miami. People made those contacts. Then you're talking about you got to add the intermingling or the Dominicans eventually, the Dominican organizations making their way into putting their hands in that product as well. Then now you're talking about, let's add into the mix the Mexicans,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you're when you're talking about major supply lines being brought in, then if those that sat on the table and negotiated this is what you're getting, this is what you're getting, this is who we're all getting it from. Business is business. At the end of the day, I'm sure you're gonna have someone step up to you and or your people to say, I can give you a better price than what you're getting it for.
It's business, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then that's when
Right.
war
Right.
then comes up again, because
they're ups now.
right
Yeah.
now it's higher up than those guys that are sitting on that table,
Right.
because that the one guy that they're dealing with, now someone else is coming in competing in prices. Now you're taking food out of this guy's mouth.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want that.
Mm-mm.
So what's going to happen now? Over your head, you're going to go. Someone on that table is always going to say, well, yeah, I'd rather drop, 25,000 instead of 30,000. I'm saving myself $5,000
Mm-hmm.
down the line. So I'll go with the guy that's selling me the stuff for 25 G's instead of dropping to 30 G's.
Mm-hmm.
So you gotta think the bigger picture. But I think you said it best, man. What a life to live. But your head's on a swivel.
Yeah. Always looking over your shoulder, always looking over your brother's shoulder, always looking at everybody.
Mhm.
Anybody can screw you at any moment.
Yep. And then you got to sit there and think of those. Let's just call it what it is. In law enforcement, that all of a sudden decide they want a piece of the pie.
Right. Then you got the payoffs.
Yeah. So that's a story in itself. I mean, this city saw some stuff, and I'm sure there's still players. I mean, some of the players that I know that were locked up 15, 20 years ago are back out. I'm not saying that they're doing what they used to do.
They paid their debt to society.
You're right. Some of them have. I'm not going to say they're all innocent, and some of them have come out and reverted back to doing what they know best.
Right.
Right. But
that's a prison reform story.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. But that's going to be a good season 2 for Sip and Say It. And I hope that, my hope is to deliver that. That's going to take some time, to keep people in place to have some of these conversations. And, throughout those conversations, one of the things that I definitely like to pay tribute to is all those detectives that saw things that, man, you couldn't even fathom. I mean, that's all movie stuff at the end of the day. But the work and time that they had to put in and be away from their families. Now we're talking about a couple of days from now, celebrating Thanksgiving. Some of these guys are, even now to this day, doing on calls, and the time that they spent away from their families, trying to help another family get closure on their loss. So, that part of all this is to be tribute to them, and the work they put in, along with, again, those that were in the narcotics world to really learn how to think out of the box, to work with new technology, um, to understand how the laws changed, how I give you a brief example now in dealing with uh, cellular telephone companies, um, dealing with subpoenas, asking for information, dealing with things that back then we thought was innovative, which it was like the Nextel chirps.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they in time the technology we figured out how to, if it called for a really detailed electronic, what they call electronic surveillance operation, how do you listen to phones, right? How do you get to that? But then the something new came in, which was obviously the direct connect. How do you intercept that?
Mhm.
And again, we're behind the eight ball because a lot of things are happening and people are thinking, oh, no such thing could happen. They can't intercept that. Oh, they did. They learned. Just like now, voice over internet,
Mhm.
right? Back then, it was just, again, trying to catch up with technology and hoping those that are working the technology and how we got to figure that out, to GPS tracking, right? Geofencing,
Mhm.
all that stuff. Like it is a lot of stuff. As I always said it, as the criminal element continued to evolve, law enforcement had to do the same exact thing. And it's always I say a cat and mouse game, because again, they may learn certain things, and then in time, law enforcement had to also learn it. But what didn't change was sometimes the creativity, or those detectives being innovative enough to infiltrate a lot of these. Back then, we called them DTOs, drug trafficking organizations, and how we found a way to get in. And sometimes it was by the most easiest way. Sit back and look at an organization, look at the weakest link and go
Mhm.
and see how you could attack that. Now, you could either attack it from the bottom of the roots, or if you have an opening at the top, then you make the move when you can, but you got to be smart. But
Did
yeah,
you ever have to deal with the Silk Road at all or no?
the Silk Road.
Yeah. So that
Elaborate.
was internet wise. That was what it was called. That was the secret, the hidden internet is where a lot of drug trafficking happened.
So you like
Um,
dark web, you saying?
yeah, dark web. But it was actually called the Silk Road, and there was the Silk Road too after that. But that was a big federal. Um, that was a giant federal bust that was done to capture this guy. But he did it on the idea of having a decentralized market type of thing. So his intentions were good, because it was the type of market where your word was bond. Everybody that sold on there sold exactly what they said they were selling. There weren't anybody that was trying to make a quick buck. I mean, everything went. It started with pot, then it moved cocaine, heroin, um, guns started going across. The guy, the originator, he made a couple $1 billion off of this because he was just taking a commission off of everything. And there's a really good movie. I gotta think about it and find it out, and I'll send it to you. But it's a great movie on the Silk Road.
Hmm.
He called himself the Pirate Roberts from. If you ever saw Princess Bride,
Yeah.
yeah. So he named himself after Pirate Roberts.
Okay.
But yeah, Silk Road is another way of using technology and got away with it for many, many years.
Mm, mm. You know what? I sit there and I'm sitting here just thinking of some of the things that we did learn during that time period, and we did an invest. And to make a long story short, I don't want to take little sound bites from any episode that we have in the future, but we got to learn that Puerto Rico was the number one spot in the world to send overnight packages.
Really?
Number one spot in the world to send overnight packages. Now, that may have changed since then, but to find that out through USPS, FedEx, um, there's so many other different chains, but number one place, that little island, number one place in the world for overnight packages.
Amazon must love that place.
I tell you, it was wild. It was wild to get the education on it. It was wild working with a lot of the federal government um, entities that assisted, in those kind of investigations. But it's just outstanding I say outstanding. It's as, did I use the right word? Astounding.
It's astounding, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, folks. Getting a little tongue tied here. But yeah, it's amazing just to see and get educated of the things that they see um, and what they intercept. And to this day, it still kind of happens. Still happens. So yeah, those were some of the conversations that we're going to have. At least I'm planning for season 2 of Sip and Say It, and kind of design that. Um, Definitely, when I say design, script it out to where I'm almost going to paint an entire movie, if we can, to those that are going to be interested in this.
Mini series, and each episode's an episode.
Yeah. It's going to be one of those, man. One of those. But listen, folks, I hope you guys have taken the opportunity to really enjoy a little bit of what we're putting out there. We see it when we get to look at the number of views, whether through Spotify, through YouTube, Apple, Amazon Music, Pocket Cast. We see that, and we're just trying to learn from everything that we're doing. And without you guys giving us input, we'll never learn. So we've appreciated the moments that you guys have spoken, left comments for us, have been daring enough to jump on board with us and have conversation. And we really want to thank you. Thank you for a first season of Sip and Say It. And we hope that we're gonna, continue to bring more to the table and really talk some of that raw stuff. The intentions were to really get into the gritty of things, and I think that is still the intentions of it. But I think we needed to get a pulse how how were we going to get taken, out in the public, right? And I think we've gotten a little bit of good response of it. Some people have been really appreciative. Some have been
Most definitely.
um, have expressed their themselves, and I think for host purposes, I think the future is open to add more people to come in and chime in, even to hopefully take. My hope is for season 2 of Sip and Say It will be some video of actually people having that moment to sit down, and people will see some of those individuals that were responsible for some of these big investigations, these giving family closures. Like, that's huge for me. Definitely huge for me. Well, Kev, is there anything that you want to share about Sip and Say It and what you've seen so far in season 1?
Well, it's really a great platform to have to speak about different things. Enjoy the camaraderie between us, the ability to bounce ideas off of each other and go back and forth on things. Um, it has become something like it's become a living being that is very welcome. Look forward to it, like becoming an extra friend.
Yeah, isn't it funny? Like, I'm sure I've gotten this a couple times, and I think you've made mention of it, of people just at, yo, when's the next episode coming out?
Oh,
You got me waiting for it.
yes, and that's a good thing. There's a good feeling when people ask that or say that. Um, yeah, it's been a great first season. Um, and I hope that you are, your listeners out there can send us more, send us more info, send us more input, send us ideas.
And I know we're talking about like this is it for this season. No, we got a couple more before the end of December. But
Are we doing something big in December?
we're still kind of in the talks about
In
that.
the talks.
Yeah, we're still in the talks about that. We're just sprinkling little nuggets of obviously what we hope to anticipate for the new year, but also giving thanks, because I mean that's what this week is Thanksgiving. It's a moment of you know thanking number one, Father God up top, that has allowed us to be here today and be able to share with everyone. Um, you get the opportunity to share with your family and friends and partake in food, and don't forget what the concept is always giving thanks. So part of what we're saying here today is just to, again, sprinkle nuggets of thank yous for everybody that has chimed in, applauded us, asked for more, left a comment.
Except for that one comment that really hurt my feelings, but I don't want to talk about that one. I don't want to talk about that one. I was never going to bring that up, Matthew, but you know.
But yeah, so I mean, yeah, it's been fun, people. So, with that, we're gonna leave Sip and Say It.
I do want to say one thing though. Before we go.
Go.
Life is short, people. I know we just in the beginning we talked about the father who was acting like an a-hole. And I'm gonna say life is short. We have a day coming up where we're gonna give thanks for all these things we have in our life. And I just want to say that relationships should be the most important thing to you over any type of material. You are here for a short time or whatever time you're allowed to be here. And that example that am I the asshole? You have a father who I don't know how old the man is, but he's the older person. So he's got, 1 year less to be around for next year. And instead of taking the opportunity to spend that time with his son, he decided it was more important for him to have these feelings of woe is me. I don't like, my son's mother's family. And a lot of us are like that. We have pettiness in us sometimes. And then we live in our feelings, and sometimes we push people away because of that. And I would like to take this opportunity to say, examine yourself, examine your life, examine those people around you. Who are you missing in your life because of something that you did or said and you regret now? This is the time of year where we should try to make amends, and we should try to bring people back into our lives. Not everyone, because some people are out of our lives for a reason, but just let that sink in.
Yeah, I agree, Kev. I mean, some people are very stubborn, set on their ways, and feel that if they don't, uh, feel if they give up or give in to the situation that they're weak. And the reality is that they need to understand that's maturing.
Yeah.
Right? That's really maturing and being better than the situation, and especially when it comes to family and friends. Right? The worst part to ever be seen is get stuck in the middle of things, and you have to choose between family or friends.
Mm-hmm.
The important part in all that is that if you get caught in a situation, this is probably another good conversation for us down the line, is that you become the mediator, right? Don't get stuck in between, because at the end there's pluses on both sides. Be mediator to a situation, because the last place you want to get caught is making a decision whether you're going to continue a friendship or continue a family association.
Right.
Right. And I think you said it best. We have to cherish every moment that we have, that we're being given, make the best of it, and learn, unless it's something really drastic or unethical or something just tragic that you got to separate yourself, man, be the mediator, be the better person in that situation, and bring both sides back together. If they're mature enough, they'll work it out. And if they, again, they're still mature enough, they'll learn how to walk away, but not put you in a situation where you got to choose sides.
Right.
So, but yeah, man, that's Christmas in two blinks. We're right into Christmas, right? So,
yeah, definitely.
And then you got a week of Christmas, and then 2025 is creeping right behind that, and that's time to reset, refocus, re-energize, redirect that mind into positive things, and try to make the new year better than the last one that you were in, right? So, all right, folks. Well, listen, at the end of the day, man, as always, man, thank you for giving us the opportunity, allowing us to speak and talk about things down the line, and thank you for your encouraging words and support. So like every single episode, please reach out to us at sipandsayitpodcast@gmail.com, or Kat, what's the other one?
info@sipandsayit.com, and go to the website, sipandsayit.com, for more information. And a quick shout out to one of our fans who just had a birthday. Happy birthday, Grace, and happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Absolutely. And as we finish every episode, let's sip and say it together, but real talk, one sip at a time. Thank you all. Appreciate you.
Peace.
On behalf of your host, Los, thank you for joining us this week on Sip and Say It. Without you, the village, and the participation on Sip and Say It, the universe will never know what's on your mind. Subscribe to Sip and Say It on media platforms like Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Pocket Cast, and our very own Facebook page at Sip and Say It. Email us with your thoughts about the episode or topics you'd like to hear to be discussed at sipandsayitpodcast@gmail.com. Tune in next for our next episode. We can sip and say it together.